Hello, my name's Gill Thompson and I live in Batterscott on the Isle of Lewis. As you can hear from the way I speak, I'm not an islander, but we've been living here for coming up for 5 years now, and I have a lovely studio overlooking the sea, which is a perfect place to work. I'm a Collagraph printmaker. I also do lino, etchings and monoprint work, but primarily Collagraph. So what is a Collagraph? It's a print which is made from a printing plate that has been collaged or created, starting with a piece of mount board. And if you use a scalpel, you can cut into the surface of your board and either inscribe a line, or you can then peel the surface away, and where you've taken that smooth surface away, it leaves a sort of fluffy absorbent core which will pick up the ink. If you've inscribed a line, that will also pick up the ink. You can use various tools to make marks into the surface. This is a tool that's used for pattern making in dressmaking, but it makes some interesting marks. You can actually stick textured materials. That's a piece of sandpaper. You can use different grades of sandpaper to get different effects. A piece of textured wallpaper, and there are so many different kinds of textured wallpaper that you can use. You can use tissue paper, corrugated paper, all sorts of materials to get an effect. The glue that you use needs to be an exterior quality PVA glue, because when you print you use damp paper, and if you've used ordinary crafting PVA, it tends to get dampened by the damp paper and will make the paper stick to the plate. So you end up with some kind of pattern that you're happy with, and that is then sealed with shellac varnish, which I actually use a ready-made one called button polish, which is a carpenter's material, but you can also make your own shellac with shellac flakes. Tapes are quite useful for doing your textures, because masking tape you can actually cut patterns into as well, or you can layer your textures, and you end up with something that is as simple as a board like this, just very, very simple. And then I've added some PVA glue, which when dry, it dries clear and shiny, and the ink wipes off. The plates that I tend to make are quite complicated, so you get a lot of detail into them. This one has been shellacked, so that's why it has that sort of orangey brown look. I've also used adhesive aluminium tape, which again will create highlights or white areas, because I can polish the ink off. This is a plate that has already been inked up and used, so it has remnants of the ink on it, and I don't get very many prints from one of these plates, because after a while the pressure of the printing press and the build-up of ink means that the detail is compromised, and so you don't get a nice crisp print. This is another one that has been printed from. You can see here I've cut the fence by cutting into the surface of the board, I've used textured wallpapers. I've used a textured paste which has a sort of grit in it, and I've incised marks into the surface and used smooth shiny paper to create the clouds. And then once it's been sealed with shellac, then you add the ink. So I'll move over to the other side of the studio and ink up the plate.